Perhaps we can now move on to Xin Wei.
Great, thanks Binru, thanks Manu. I actually prepared some slides, so I'm going to share my screen. But I promise I'll walk through them in a very concise way. So let me just do that right now. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Fantastic. So thanks again for having me. I'm very excited to be here, excited for the conversation that's upcoming. So, I thought I would just start by sharing, I guess, reflections from where I stand on what the new normal has meant for Grab, and see, how to draw some conclusions more broadly that apply to Singapore and our economy. So, I think the best way to characterize the new normal for us as a marketplace business is that it's really shifted the dynamics across all sides of the marketplace. As many of you are familiar, we are a two-sided marketplace in transport, a three-sided marketplace in food. And in many ways, our value comes from being able to find the right equilibrium between the demand and supply sides of this marketplace. And I think what we have seen with COVID, what COVID has done is it's really kind of catalyzed some fairly structural and fundamental shifts across all sides of this marketplace, but particularly, leading with consumer demand as consumers go online and sort of start to try a lot more categories online than they used to. That in turn triggers a change in merchants and their business models. And I think that adjustment has not always been the smoothest, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And to continue to serve all that demand reliably and well, as a platform, we also need to think about sort of the supply side, which is the drivers and delivery partners. So let me just walk through this real quick. So I think the consumer story is fairly self-evident, which is that lots of people started going online to do things that they used to do offline. So just to share some sort of interesting tidbits from our business. We did see much higher volumes in March and April. People ordered a lot more, spent a lot more per order on our food delivery platform, GrabFood. Pre-existing trends were accentuated in some sense. I suppose it's difficult to unseat fried chicken, burgers, and bubble tea. So those continue to be people's favorite foods, probably, to cope also with the being locked in and wanting comfort food. But we also saw a lot of new behaviors surface. So we started island-wide deliveries, which allowed people to try new restaurants. And that was sort of an experiment in saying like, hey, will people accept a much longer delivery time or potentially, a much slightly higher cost delivery so that they can try some restaurant that's maybe higher end restaurants, something that they've never tried before? I think the answer there was yes. We also piloted a Michelin type category. We saw growth in categories like convenience, health and beauty, and our parcel delivery business sort of unexpectedly skyrocketed as people started to outsource errands. So I think what does this mean? For us, we do believe that this change is going to persist. We see different segments of users emerging. So I think in the past, people who use online platforms, especially online food delivery, tend to be more convenience seeking. I think increasingly we're going to see people look online to fulfill many different types of needs, not just convenience and speed. So people are going to look for variety. I think there's going to be people who are looking very much for sort of the high-end Michelin type experience, and restaurants are going to think about how to deliver that in a remote kind of setting, right? Like work from home, but maybe eat from home. But there's also going to be, I think, a polarization in a way. The economic impact of COVID, it remains to be seen, but we do know that it's going to hit some sectors of our society fairly quickly and fairly substantially in a negative way. So I think the distinctions will sharpen as well, and what people are looking for from a platform like ours. So there's going to be people who are seeking very much sort of price-friendly or affordable options, as well as the very high end. And of course, growth in new categories will continue, especially categories that were previously not so penetrated. So I think for us here, the key challenge is really to make it accessible and seamless. We talk a lot about sort of early adopters and so on, but now we have moved far beyond early adopters. So it's almost the opposite problem, which is how do I get my mom or my dad to successfully use the platform to order food for themselves. I think similarly, there's a similar problem statement for consumer category. So how do I get people comfortable with buying groceries or buying hair care products or personal care products on Grab than they might be with ordering a Grab car, which is something that people are a lot more used to. So I think that's kind of how I would characterize a shift on the consumer side. I think in turn that really is catalyzing a shift on the merchant side, and that's really where sort of the interesting and more complex trends are taking place. So for sure, there was a rush to get online, so we onboarded lots of merchants. I think what became very clear was that merchants were at very different levels of preparedness for this change. So some were really ready to go, but others were extremely, I would say, much less prepared for this change. And if I characterize the group that felt most pain from this change, it would be our MSMEs, the micro, small, medium enterprises, our hawkers, coffee shops, small neighborhood stores. And for two main reasons. One is that they tend to be, and of course there are exceptions, they tend to be a bit less tech savvy. So any solution needs to be really simple. But the other reason is that their business is sort of fundamentally built on a brick and mortar model. So they tend to have sort of very high variable costs, high costs, they have lower margins. So they generally just don't benefit as much from scale. So we have to find a way to serve them that fits into that cost structure and that's cheap for them. And don't forget, we still have to pay the guy who's delivering this thing. So there are many different sort of needs to balance on that platform. And I think something else that many of you will be familiar with and remember is that commissions became a point of friction. As dining activity disappeared, restaurants really started hurting because of that. And in many ways, we too, were trying to adapt to this new normal that, the industry was not really set up to be dependent on takeaway and delivery. So we were always sort of an extension of capacity, and suddenly this was kind of the be all and end all of the business. So there are sort of many adjustments going on. I would say the immediate term, what we tried to do was to focus on sustaining our partners, getting them through it. And I think there are a few kind of measures that we tried there. And we had lots of help as well from the Singapore government. So ESG helped to reduce commissions and so on. But I think there's going to be a longer term shift. And if what we believe is right about the consumer shift, then in the longer term, we need to find sustainable ways to get the MSMEs online, right? Because it's going to take time for their cost structures to shift. So we're going to have to try kind of new delivery concepts. How do we aggregate orders more? Can we move some of them to cloud kitchens? How do we really get them online and help them optimize their online presence? So that's something that many, I would say, brick and mortar businesses have a lot less experience with. Can they start using ads? Can they start using different tools to boost their visibility? I think that's sort of a new sort of segment of services that we're going to have to start offering to our restaurants and our merchants on the platform, not just F&B, but all merchants on our platform. And at the same time, food deliveries in I would say, fairly early stage in Singapore and in Southeast Asia. I think there's still lots of room to optimize. We can drive costs down a lot more through batching, aggregating orders. I think all of these things need to come together to sort of form this sort of new, maybe a new concept or a new equilibrium for merchants who are trying to digitalize and make it sustainable sort of across all sides of the platform and including for the platform itself. So I'll end off by talking really quick about the gig economy. I think for us on the supply side, it became clear that the gig economy is here to stay. Many gig jobs became termed as essential services. And I think going forward, gig work can be an important source of income for people who lose their jobs through this crisis and so on. I think what we kind of learn and on reflection realize is that we have a very significant and deep role to play in providing stability. So the job itself may be transitional for a lot of people, but the platform can provide sort of a layer of stability. So something that we were able to do was that we moved across the region over 100,000 drivers whose transport livelihood diminished drastically upon all the lockdowns and so on. We moved them to do deliveries. We were able to onboard a lot more delivery partners. We were able to sort of leverage our scale to offer and existing relationships with insurers to offer them insurance. So if anyone got sick or got quarantined, they got insurance. And I think longer term, we're thinking sort of upskilling, place and train. So we see our role as not just being a platform for people to participate in gig work today, but also to help them transition out of that, you know, to what's their next gig. And I think in many ways, the crisis underscored our commitment to this. And also highlighted to us, you know, that we can't do this alone. I think in Singapore, we had a lot of government support and we also collaborated very closely with the unions. And I think that that's an arrangement that we believe has some longevity for us as we go into the new normal, that we want to continue to deepen that connection. So I'll end off here. I think I've taken a bit of time, but you know, glad to discuss any of this in more detail as we go along. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Xin Wei. I think you've really helped us understand quite a bit. So we've had two industry practitioners, Bin Ru and Xin Wei, introduce some ideas about how businesses have responded. And I'm sure there must be some questions. So please prepare some questions or comments so that we can have a nice, lively discussion after the presentations.